The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a surge in cases of violence against girls and women in the region. In response, COIN, with support from the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs, has launched Caribbean United Against Gender-Based Violence. In partnership with COIN and the WHA, ORG Bahamas Foundation launched Me, You, Us, Youth Alone. Our program is rooted in an asset-based design, which positions participants at the helm of designing interventions which impact their communities. Here's what they had to say.
One of the biggest deal breakers, I think, would be a bad relationship with family and friends. Also, controlling or jealous behavior. Sometimes people can be embarrassed to introduce their significant other to friends or family, which means that they're either not comfortable with the relationship or the person is not really up to their standards. Also, if they have an alcohol or substance abuse, when they're terrible at communication, lack of communication, and also, which is very kind of a big deal as well, an obsession with social media, trying to make themselves look a certain way on social media, but they're portraying a totally different life.
Your partner not wanting to hear stories about your past, your partner downgrading you and your peers, and the hate they have for you to hang out with your other friends. They feel as though they don't want to hear what you have to say in your past. They don't want to listen to your past relationship and love lives or whatever. They talk bad about you and your family, saying how you guys are not worth it. I don't know why I came in this relationship with you. Stuff of that sort. And a spouse can also have hatred, so much hatred towards you that they do not want you to hang out with your own friends. They want you to just be against your friends. They want you to just be a homebody. They want you to stick to yourself. Whereas if they know they need you, they can come get you without other people stepping into the way.
I would inform my friend that they should leave, but before leaving, go to the authorities, aka the police, and make it known that this is happening, and even put a restraining order on their perpetrator or their partner. Also, to cut ties with them, because you don't know what else the person is capable of doing. This week it could be slapping, next it's punching, and it can even lead to death. It's your safety and mental health above everything.
Most times when someone is in an abusive relationship, the last thing they want to hear is everyone else's opinion. So if my friend is in an abusive relationship, I would spend my time encouraging her and reminding her of her worth, showing her what true love is and what it looks like. With my help and the help of others, she will soon come to her senses and build up the strength to leave that situation.
The advice I would give my friend that is in an abusive relationship is to leave. Although it might not be the easiest thing to do, it would be the best thing to do because she will be putting her life in danger if she stays. I would also always set up time for us to talk and let her know that I will be the listening ear for her. I will also be a very supportive friend. Also, I would not blame her if she decides to stay, but I'll always encourage her to talk to me or to talk to someone else who can help her. I would also be there at her side to help her make a safety plan, because once again, leaving would not be the easiest thing to do, but it would definitely be the best thing to do.
Personally, in the event that I get angry or frustrated, I tend to try to take the situation or the person that made me feel this way out of my head by thinking positive thoughts about anything. It could be towards work, life, my spiritual life, anything. I also try to read a scripture on anger and breathe slowly while I was reading it. And then on top of that, I play some music to soothe my spirit and get it back to where it needs to be.
Today we will be speaking with Ms. Chauntez Wilson from the Bahamas Crisis Centre. How are you today?
I'm great. It's good to be here.
Well, Ms. Wilson, we're so happy that you're here with us. We'd first like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today, and we're so excited to learn about everything that you're going to give us insight on. So can you tell us a little about the work that you do at the Bahamas Crisis Centre?
Yes, happily. I'm a volunteer with the Crisis Center. I have been for the last 12 years. Currently, most of the work I do is with our 24-hour hotline, and if you are in need of any of our services, 328-0922 is the hotline number. In the past, I've volunteered as a community organizer and also as a policy advocate with the Crisis Center as well. And I got my start in this space actually in college, so right around you guys' age. My freshman year of college, I joined the Take Back the Night Club, which it does a lot of the similar work to the Crisis Center, advocating against sexual violence on campus and providing support, peer support, to survivors of that kind of violence. So that's my story.
That's an extensive volunteer portfolio, and we love that. When I heard you said volunteer, I was like, wow, you must be really passionate to be investing so much time, and we need people like you.
Well, 1 in 3 Bahamians, it's estimated, have experienced, Bahamian women have experienced IPV, intimate partner violence. So it's a real need. It's a real need.
So, Ms. Wilson, the first question I have for you is, what is domestic violence?
Good question. Domestic violence is any pattern of behavior that is meant to control or oppress one's intimate partner or family member. So a common misconception is that domestic violence is only physical violence. And actually, it can also encompass emotional and psychological abuse. So things like gaslighting, which is making you feel as if your feelings or the way that you are thinking is either crazy or invalid. Also financial abuse, which a lot of people don't think of, but things like withholding funds if you were the only breadwinner, or taking someone's income and telling them that you will manage it in order to be able to control them. So there are a full array of different behaviors that actually fall under the domestic violence umbrella that a lot of people aren't thinking of as domestic violence. And it's unfortunately a very pervasive problem.
Right. Okay, so my next question is, do abusers show any potential of warning signs, to say that I abuse or?
Yes, and I want to be careful saying this. I feel as if there's a tendency to say, well, she should have seen or he should have seen, well, how he get in that anyway. And this is not to say that anyone can't end up being an abuser once you actually get into a relationship to them. There's no special letter on their shirt that lets avoid that person before you start dating them. But once you're in a relationship, there are some behaviors you can look out for, watch out for to kind of signal some red flags, to signal that maybe you should start distancing yourself from that person. The first one I want to talk about is jealousy. And I put this one first because in our society, a lot of people think jealousy is a good thing. They don't want a guy or a gal that ain't a little bit jealous. Right. And a little bit jealous is okay. It's a natural human emotion. But the way that we handle our jealousy, the way that we manifest it, and how jealous we get is up to us. And someone who lets their jealousy run free is toxic and is a big red flag. Not every jealous person is an abuser, but every single abuser is jealous. Right. I will say that. Another one that goes hand in hand with this is controlling behavior. If they start trying to be very possessive of you, telling you how to clothe your body, a lot of people think that that's super normal for a guy to say, oh, that skirt's too short, you ain't coming out with me like that. And if that's once in a while, he could say that. Yeah. But, if that's a pattern of behavior, that's a red flag. And other types of controlling, you can't go there, you can't do this. You shouldn't talk to your friends anymore. Big red flag. Isolation is a huge part of an abuser's repertoire. The more that you depend on your abuser, the more that they can control you, and isolating you from other potential supports like friends and family is a big red flag. Other red flags include, of course, being violent, which may seem obvious, but sometimes, if someone's violent and throwing things against the wall, you're like, well, they're not hitting me, or they're not hitting my children, so that's fine. But this is a red flag, because these kinds of things escalate. And another one is substance abuse, which, we don't want to stigmatize people who have substance abuse issues. It can be a disease, but if someone has a pattern of behavior of substance abuse, you need to be watching them, because in these times they are much more likely to be violent.
Right. That is so true. Okay, can you define the word consent for us?
Absolutely. Consent, when it comes to intimate partner relationships, means having agreement, wholehearted agreement between the two individuals for the full scope, breadth, and duration of any kind of intimate act. And I say all of those things because some people think, and I also want to say it has to be active agreement as well. A lot of people think that passive agreement or even not refusing is the same as consent. That is not true. Someone has to actively agree to do the act, and they have to actively agree to do all of the act for the full duration of the act. I want to say that anyone involved in a sexual or intimate act has the right to say no, even if they've already said yes.
Right.
Like you no longer have consent. If you started, with the making out and she said yes, or he said yes, and it started to escalate, and it's clear that they're uncomfortable, you need to continue to ask for consent, to secure consent. And I also want to say, I said for the full scope of the act, because just because someone agreed to, let's say, have sex, does not mean that they agreed to have unprotected sex, for example. And there's something that's been trending online, for example, with a lot of Gen Zs, called stealthing, which is when a male partner will remove his condom during a sexual act. That is not consensual sex. That is rape. That is rape. And it is because the other person has not consented to the full act. They have not consented to all aspects of the act.
Right. Wow. I did not know that. Thank you so much. Okay, and my next question for you is, sexual coercion versus sexual manipulation versus rape. What are the differences between those three?
Well, okay, so sexual manipulation, and then this is a broad term, but it means the utilization of sex to manipulate someone else's emotions, or, and I feel as if it's often characterized as a very feminine thing. I do think it's a little bit of a misogynist term, utilized to characterize women as, the Eves in the garden of, as it were, seducers, and, but for the most part, in a broader sense, it is the utilization of sex, and it does not necessarily constitute assault, depending on what the act is and how the manipulation occurs, but it's a super vague term, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Sexual coercion and rape are not any different from each other. People use sexual coercion often to describe what is kind of colloquially termed as gray rape, so things where they feel as if consent was in some way unclear, or that there's some mitigating circumstances. And the fact of the matter is, the reality is that it is actually still rape most of the time. Coercion does not, and even the Bahamian law states this, I should also say, consent is required for a sexual act to be not considered rape. And I mean a penetrative act, I guess if it's not penetrative, it's considered sexual assault. So, but if you penetrate someone using a coercive tactic, and those can be anything from financial, to starting to withhold finances from them, or in some ways, or tricking them in some way. So going back to what I was saying about stealthing, for example, or other ways that you might trick someone, inebriating them, plying them with alcohol or some other type of drug. These are all considered to be under the umbrella of sexual coercion, because you did not use physical force to get them into bed or into that sexual act, does not mean that it is not rape. So most things that people are calling sexual coercion are really just rape. A form of rape, yes.
So good morning, Ms. Wilson.
Good morning.
My first question for you is, what is victim blaming?
Victim blaming, well, it's there in the name. Victim blaming is when we, I want to say, excuse violent behavior by blaming the actions of the victim prior or during the event. So, common things are, well, what did she expect? Look what she's wearing. Or, well, how she expect him to know if she don't scream. She didn't fight back. These are victim blaming tactics. And, they come out of rape culture, they come out of misogyny often, even though I will say, men as victims are often blamed as well. Because we have a general stigma that men can't be sexually abused or domestic abused as well. Like, why he stay with that gal? What do you mean he was domestic? He was a victim of domestic violence. Look how big he is. Right. That's a type of victim blaming as well. So, this is essentially shifting the blame from the perpetrator, the person who actually did the act, to the person who is the victim for a number of different prejudices that we have deeply entrenched in our social fabric.
Okay, thank you. That was a great response. So the second question is, why do victims sometimes return to or stay with the abusers?
Whew. We could do the whole show on that. I know that it can be very difficult if you're watching someone go through abuse to see them continuously go back, if you've ever known someone like that. But it actually is very, very difficult to leave. Why victims stay? There are a number of different reasons. I'd say the first and most poignant one, fear. You are being physically, violently coerced into this space, and leaving is actually the most dangerous time in a victim's lifespan in that relationship. When we talk about femicide in domestic violence situations, often it's at the point of leaving. Not always, but often it's at the point of leaving. The abuser has found out that the abusee, the victim, the survivor, is planning to leave, planning to take their children with them, has been seeing someone else, or has been disobeying them and seeking help elsewhere. These are the times when it's actually most dangerous for someone in that relationship. So straight up fear is the number one reason that people stay, and people don't really give credence to that. But there's a lot of other really poignant reasons. One of them is finances. Finances are one of the biggest reasons that people stay in toxic relationships in a general sense. Low income or financial issues is one of the biggest risk factors for domestic violence as well. So that's a huge thing. If you are dependent on that person, and this is big in the Bahamas as well, especially when it comes to incest, you'll find people staying like, oh, you can't report your uncle because he is pay your school fees, or he is buy your books, or he is pay the rent for us. Yeah, exactly. So, we can't afford to lose this breadwinner, so we stay and hope that it doesn't get worse. And then lastly, abuse is a cycle. And it's a cycle that starts small and grows and grows and grows, right? It can start with things that we don't think of, some of those red flags that you might let slide. He's jealous, he's controlling, bit by bit, he's convincing you that your friends aren't good for you, and you're cutting them off because you're like, he loves me, he knows. And I keep saying he, but abuser can be any gender. But, and it starts like that. Maybe slowly, you're transferring your finances into their control. Slowly, you're cutting yourself off from your other communities. Slowly, he or she is getting into your head, saying things like gaslighting you, saying like, you don't know what you're talking about. Babe, look, you're being crazy. You're overreacting, these kinds of things, and you're questioning yourself. By the time you get to the point where people can recognize abuse externally, you've probably already been experiencing abuse for quite some time. And you're trapped in your own psychology, and I say your own, but psychological world that he's created for you. You believe you can't do things without that person. You believe you don't deserve to do things. You believe you've already cut off your friends, and you believe that they won't help you, which is often not true. You believe that your family doesn't love you anymore, that you've slighted them, and you can't go to them for help. And lastly, a big reason people don't go for help is just a lack of knowledge about what kind of help is available. And unfortunately, most of the spaces offering help to people in these situations are critically underfunded. And, getting public education is an expensive endeavor. So yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people just don't know where they can go for help.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, due to the pandemic, how has the economy affected rates of domestic violence?
Yes, well, so there's been an uptick, and that's due to both the economy and the, spatial situation of many people. So obviously, I've said before that finances is a major risk factor, for domestic violence. And so with persons, a lot of people going through financial hardship, it means that more persons in those situations are without the means to leave. Maybe they literally can't afford rent on their own, so they need to stay in the situation, and that actually happens. I work the hotline. That happens a lot. A lot of the time I ask, do you have somewhere else to go? This is my home. I pay rent on this. We have a lease. If I go, I can't afford to be somewhere long term. So, that is a very strong, and it's caused a real uptick. Actually, as of 2021, which is the last clear numbers that we had, there was about an 11% uptick in domestic and sexual violence cases, presumably due to the pandemic, definitely since the pandemic had started. And I know that the Crisis Centre at around that time had recorded about a 30% uptick in calls. I think that it's calmed down since then, but at a year into the pandemic, we were seeing really large numbers, higher volume. So yeah, some of the other reasons that it's been very difficult for this increase, I suppose, is just people are confined to spaces with their abusers. Abusers are not getting, some of the releases, I want to say, or other spaces. They're constantly in contact. They have high stressors, which means that they are much more likely to take that out on their abuse victims. And women or children or men or whoever in these situations are without places to go, and not just that, without leave to leave. We were confined and told you have to stay. Now, obviously, that would have, leaving a situation like that does count as an emergency, and you would not have been stopped. But once again, where do you go? And then lastly, the kind of isolation that quarantining and, just in general, sheltering in place caused. A lot of us felt that isolation, right? We weren't seeing our friends as much. We weren't seeing our family as much. For someone who's already being, isolated in an abusive relationship, that was, much, much more pronounced. So a lot of the help networks that they might have had access to, they were now cut off from. So yes, we have seen an uptick, and it's really unfortunate. But hopefully, as we open up now, we see a little bit, and also hopefully the extreme numbers also encourages more persons to address this issue, to join groups like the Crisis Centre and Equality Bahamas and the Bahamas Sexual Health and Rights Association, and to address these issues. There are organizations out there trying to help people in these situations, and hopefully now that there's more light on it, people will support them.
Okay, thank you. I really hope to see that decrease. So the last question, why do people most commonly seek help when they are exposed to gender-based violence?
Why do they seek help?
Where do they seek help? Sorry.
Where? Okay. Honestly, so first of all, the Crisis Centre, please do. I'm going to plug that. Unfortunately, we are the premier nonprofit that provides these kinds of services. Definitely the oldest and longest standing. And we do get calls on our hotline, again, 328-0922. So yes, of course, there's that call. But when I, as a volunteer, receive calls, often they have looked for help elsewhere to varying degrees of success. I want to give a big both shout out and call out to faith-based communities. You are often people's first line of help when they are going through something. And I wish I could say a resounding, yes, you guys do a great job. There are some churches out there doing a great job, and the Crisis Centre really does work with churches that are in that mind space, in that space. But there are also some churches that really are not. There are some churches that They provide counseling and try to keep couples together when it's clear that, you know, this situation is very toxic and abusive. There are, you know, spaces where they say, you know, man is the head of the home, you need to stay. Just not helpful sometimes. And so I really want to encourage faith-based communities to uplift people in those situations. Connect with the Crisis Center. We do trainings, like connect with social services. They also provide a lot of support for how you can help members of your faith community if that happens. Other places that people seek help, of course, their family and friends. If you are interested in how to help a friend in that space, you can once again call the Crisis Center. We have pamphlets on that in our office and also on our website, bahamascrisiscenter.com. The center is spelled CENTRE.com, where you can learn some of that information, but also you can call the hotline, and most volunteers have that information more or less at hand, and they can walk you through what you can do to help. Other places that people seek help, they're doctors, they're medical providers, and one of the reasons for that is because that's a private space. Like I said before, abusive relationships are about control, and often at some point in time you find that your partner is monitoring everywhere you go. The doctor is one place that they can't follow you in unless you give them permission. Mm-hmm. You know, you go to the OBGYN and they're like, you want your husband here? It's standard that you have that exam on your own. So you get this one-on-one time with a health care provider. So doctors, once again, I actually just recently gave a presentation to a group of doctors. Please reach out to the Crisis Center if you would like training on how to respond if someone comes into your office and reports some form of violence. There are protocols, international protocols, on how you can, like step by step, on how you can address that make it nice and easy for a doctor so they don't have to panic and be like, I don't know anything about this. It's pretty, you can keep it straightforward and pass it on and get them the help that they need. So those are the places people usually go, and we do really encourage them to, if you cannot go anywhere else, if you're being monitored, do go to your healthcare provider or a healthcare provider. Come to the Crisis Center if you can manage to sneak a phone and call our hotline quickly, a secure phone to call our hotline quickly. There are resources out there. Please use them. We are here to help.
All right. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Ms. Wilson.
Good morning.
My first question is, how does expected gender roles or cultural norms affect victims of gender-based violence?
So, to me, if I had to illustrate it, if gender-based violence was the tapestry, was the fabric, then the gender norms and cultural norms are the threads. That they build up the culture that allows this to perpetuate. And if I could be more specific, I suppose, gender norms really do trap people in toxic behaviors that can escalate into intimate partner violence. So, for example, I think that the ways that our community, but not just Bahamian community, across a lot of religious communities, conservative communities, and just the world over, we have created a power dynamic between men and women where men are above women. And within relationships, power dynamics at the end of the day, abuse is about power. So, creating a gender expectation that the man is the head of the home or the man is in control of the woman, because head of the home can have a broad definition, but somehow is in control of the woman or has power over the woman, creates an expectation that woman would not report a lot of these red flags that we're talking about because they seem to fold into that particular gender-based norm. Also, a lot of people think about it as oppression of women within gender-based norms and stigmas, but there's also, the stigma of having emotion as a man, and dealing with your emotion as a man. We really do trap men into a space where they're not fully free to explore the full gamut of their emotions and to deal with them in a healthy way. And it's one of the reasons that men do exhibit a lot more violence both in and outside of the home, right? So, by limiting men this way, we are limiting the ways that they can express their emotions, and that does come out violently. I feel as if that's a huge part of why gender-based norms contribute to violence. And then, of course, from a sexual point of view, we're limiting the ways that people are able to express themselves sexually. Ideas about I want to say shaming and these kinds of things, and that decreases people's willingness, the stigma, I suppose, willingness to come forward with their abuse and the ability to get help during their abuse. So it's a very complex, nuanced way, but at the end of the day, it's like I said, it's these little threads that on their own feel harmless, but come together in a tapestry that is rape culture and violence culture.
Okay, very interesting. And my last question is, do women/girls or men/boys seek help when they experience gender-based violence? If yes, where?
Well, like I said in the previous question, you do find a lot of them seek help in their faith-based communities. I once again want to recommend the Crisis Centre, 328-0922. We are 24/7, 365 days a year. You will always get an answer from us. Other places, and I was thinking of adults when you asked the question, but you also said girls and boys. And they are finding, often going to find help in their schools, in their guidance counselors, which, means that we do need to ensure that those persons are updated in their, knowledge on how to deal with those situations. And often in that case, they would report straight to social services, who are obviously specialists in this kind of child abuse. So,
okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
My question is, what barriers do women and girls or men and boys face in seeking care? Is it possible for abusers to change?
Okay, 1-2 punch on good questions there. So the first one is, what are the obstacles? And so we talked a little bit about gender-based norms and how that can create stigma. That's actually a huge obstacle a lot of the time, the stigma of being labeled as a victim or as, I don't want to know if I can use this word, if you're a male experiencing that kind of violence, there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of shame attached to this, unfortunately. When, it's unfortunate because it's not your fault. A lot of people don't, think that when it happens to them, it's one of the first things that you should say to someone who's experienced this kind of violence. This is not your fault. It's the first reassurance that they need. But unfortunately, it doesn't always feel that way for a victim, and there's a lot of shame attached, and I think that, that's a cultural norm that is a barrier. Of course, another barrier is not knowing where to go, feeling as if, whatever resources are available to you, they will not help. And this is unfortunately reinforced by, sometimes if you choose the wrong place, they won't. And there have been horror stories, even in places where you should be able to seek help, where persons have not. And so once again, I want to encourage the Crisis Centre. I'm just going to keep plugging it, 328-0922. You cannot hear that hotline number enough. And as far as other barriers to seeking help, finances, I've said before, that's an issue, but depending on the type of help that you need, financial barriers can be, a big thing from the point of view of if you need legal assistance, for example, that can be expensive. And I do want to say that the DePuche Law School has a legal aid department that does handle some stuff, and that the Crisis Centre, to a much lesser capacity, also offers legal aid. So, if that is the barrier for you, please call us. Also, the abuser potentially facing jail time is a big barrier to people reporting. Because at the end of the day, you do still usually love your abuser. You're in a relationship with them, or if you are a minor, that may be your parent. There's, like I said, domestic violence is a broad swath. So I want to also say that does not have to be the case. I think that it's an important thing for victims to know that you can seek recourse without sending your abuser to jail. If that is something that you are interested in, you can go to family court and you can get a protection order which keeps them physically distant from you, and that's actually a very swift. Family court is one of the few things that goes swiftly in the Bahamian courts, is the protection order. They really do it quite swiftly, to commend them on that. And you can get that protection. And I just want to also say that protection does not bar you from your child support or other types of financial supports either. So you don't have to send that person to jail. You can get that protection order. And if you go to family court and the person admits their behavior, you can also get, they can also be ordered to get help. And so that's where we come to the next part. Can abusers change? Yes, but that's not a reliable, don't rely on that, I guess, don't rely on that. Yes, abusers can change. We can all change. There actually is a men's program, and it is just for men. It's not fully recognizing the full spectrum of abuse there, but 90-something% of most of reported abusers are men, so it's filling a need. But that is actually in tandem with the Catholic Church, if I remember correctly. They have an abusers rehabilitation program. They call it just the men's program, I think. Currently, I think it's been suspended during COVID, but I think it's due to come back in just 2 months, in July. So that is, I believe, headed by Dr. Ferrer, who is a psychiatrist, psychologist. And yes, there is an opportunity for abusers to rehabilitate themselves. I don't know the exact success rates, and I don't think that is something that someone in an abusive relationship should count on. First things first, protect you and your children, and any other dependents who might be within an abusive household. But yes, there's an opportunity for that. And I encourage, people to seek that out.
Very informative. Thank you for that. My second question is, what support, resources, or services are currently available for survivors by the Crisis Center?
By the Crisis Center. Okay, so we actually provide a number of different support services. There's what I would call our ongoing regular services, and then our ad hoc services, because really honestly, once you become a client of the Crisis Center, we'll try to help you out any way we can. But the primary services that we offer are professional counseling, and that is not done by volunteers, I should say, because I am not a psychologist. These are trained psychologists who give pro bono time to the Crisis Center in order to serve dozens of clients with professional, ongoing, and regular cognitive behavioral therapy and other types of therapy to deal with the trauma that they have experienced. And they also offer these services to the children of abuse victims who obviously also experience quite a lot of post-traumatic effects after leaving those spaces. We also offer the hotline, which is an urgent response option, or is meant to be an urgent response option if you are currently in or trying to leave a space that is violent. You can call the Crisis Center hotline, 328-0922, and we will help to get you placed into a new shelter or in any other way removed from the violent situation. Of course, we'll link you in with our counseling services. The hotline also, often provides a space for you to talk if it's not an urgent thing, but you also need to talk through something. You can call the hotline for that. And then we also offer a lot of what I'd call practical assistance. So everything from if you need to put together a plan on how to leave, you can call the Crisis Center, and we can, help you do that, because there's some things you can do to gradually build yourself up and to empower yourself to leave. I won't say them on camera, because if everyone knew them, then they probably wouldn't work. We also provide, where we can, material assistance. We've worked with sponsors, like community sponsors and partners and corporate partners and whatnot in the past, to provide things like school supplies for the children of victims when they've needed, because obviously when you leave a space, a violent space, you often have to leave a whole lot of things behind. So ensuring that they have everything from clothing to, supplies for school, other types of supplies, where we can, sometimes food, but that is what I call, like I said, our ad hoc services. We do that on a need-to-need basis, and also the availability of which we have access to those kinds of things because they're not regular things that the Crisis Center provides. Otherwise, we also go out into the community and educate about sexual violence and gender-based violence. And we used in the before times, before COVID, we went into schools and taught about red flags, green flags, and healthy relationship behavior, comprehensive sexual health education. We used to have an ongoing program, grade 8 most recently, but prior to that, grade 12, doing those kinds of things. And I suppose, lastly, our advocacy work. So we do a lot of consulting to the government and pressuring the government, advocacy to the government on, like I said, laws and policies that would uplift and support communities that are being affected by this kind of violence.
Thank you. And my last question is, what can we do to help as community members?
So there is so much that you can do to help, and I'm going to divide this into two questions. A, how do you help if you know someone who is in a violent situation, a domestic abuse situation, and B, how do you help overall with this issue? And so I'll start with number one. If you know someone who's in an abusive situation, the very first and most important thing that you can do is be there. I know that sounds really simple and vague, but like I said before, one of the early things that an abuser will try to do is to cut their victim off from their friends and their support systems. And so the most important thing that you can do is just remind that person that I am still here for you, and I am a support system for you. Trying to maintain regular contact with them, even if it's just checking if you could find a secure way to communicate with them that their partner won't know about, or meet with them that their partner won't know about, be there for them. Maybe you can gently encourage them to start to make a plan to leave, or to see that they're in an abusive relationship. Encourage them to get more professional resources like the Crisis Center, or to talk to social services or any of the other resources that are out there. And I want to say, and also with consent. Always, you don't want to press them, because then they'll push you away, and you definitely don't want to go and say, I'm going to call the Crisis Center, or do things without their permission, because that is what their life already is, someone controlling them, and you're also controlling them. So yeah, those are some baseline things that you can do for someone who might be experiencing abuse. As far as what you can do, if you just want to address this in a more general sense, is volunteer with the Crisis Center. We address gender-based violence and intimate partner violence from almost all aspects: response, preventative, advocacy, everything. So if you are interested in being a part of this, you can do that. If that's not within your remit, if that sounds like a bigger commitment than you are willing to do, of course, financial contributions are welcome. Also, pressing your MP or your community leaders to work with the Crisis Center, or to advocate for laws or policies, and you can, call into the Crisis Center, and we'll walk you through what we need as far as that kind of advocacy. And I want to also say a big one. You guys are in school. Press your school for comprehensive sexual health education. When you become parents, or if you have younger siblings, press their school for comprehensive sex education. We talk about preventative. Biggest thing you can do to prevent violence in relationships is to teach how to have healthy relationships as early as possible. We really should be teaching this from grade 1. Different types of education for different ages, of course, but comprehensive sex education, studies have shown that it really does reduce violence in relationships for later, and unfortunately, because that's a longitudinal study where you'd have to study over time, the numbers are not that rich yet, but early studies, and results have shown that you can reduce, like men, for example, who have had this kind of education or something very high, like 50% less likely to abuse a partner than men who have not. So comprehensive sex education is, if there's one thing that you do to try to prevent this as a social issue, it's advocate for the schools in your community to implement this as part of their curriculum. And, if they don't, when you do have kids, ensure that you talk to your kids about sexual health and healthy relationships. So I think that would be my advice.
Don't blame girls and women for how they choose to dress or judge their behavior. Violence can't be prevented through limiting the freedoms of girls. This only allows the violence to continue because perpetrators become invisible and not held accountable, and those who witness the abuse remain silent. In closing, here are a few next steps that you can use to change societal norms and attitudes towards gender-based violence. 1. Stop rape culture. One way to stop rape culture is by not allowing people to minimize or normalize sexual assault and rape through jokes. If a parent tells a joke about sexual violence against girls and women, say you don't find it funny and you won't tolerate it. 2. Confront and reflect on your ideas and beliefs. Reflect on your beliefs, actions, and opinions and why you have them. Be honest, admit your faults, and commit to changing the way you think and act. 3. Stop stereotyping men's and women's roles. Social roles and expectations may affect our decisions about relationships. Men are taught that expressing feelings is not masculine. Examine your social roles and learn ways to express feelings directly and non-violently to create more meaningful interpersonal relationships. Did anything shared in this video surprise you? Leave a comment below and let's discuss. Also, please like and share this video. And finally, please take our short survey on gender-based violence, attitudes, and perceptions. The link will be in our caption. And thank you for watching.